Hi guys, this is Miss Kegley, and today we're going to learn about livestock judging. This is one of my favorite topics, so hopefully you guys like it as well. And remember, this is also a FFA contest if you are interested. So we will start with our objectives for today. So you guys are going to learn how to identify the traits we look for in beef cattle. So if you remember from the previous lesson that beef cattle are meant for the purpose of meat and dairy cattle are used for milk. So hopefully you guys remember that. Okay, so some basics of livestock judging. So we're going to either evaluate market animals or breeding animals. So the difference between that is market animals are raised for meat and breeding are used to retain in your herd, and you're going to breed them and they're going to produce offspring. So that is the difference between market and breeding. And you're also going to pick on kind of what the industry wants. So a good example in this is the pigs. So if way back when pigs were super fat because people needed lard for their cooking, but now they don't, and they don't want to eat a lot of fat in their meat, so pigs have become a lot leaner or have a lot less fat on them. So that's kind of how industry changes. Cattle used to be really short, but now they're a lot taller, so that is what that means. Okay, so steps to judging beef. So we're going to evaluate cattle from the ground up. So we're going to start with their feet and move, with their feet, and we're going to move upwards and look for their muscle on top. And you're also going to start from the back. That's a really easy way to first evaluate for muscle. You're also going to evaluate for the most important traits. We'll get into that on the next slide and kind of talk about what traits to look for. And you're going to eliminate any easy placing in the class. So if there's this really short, narrow heifer in a class, and she's just terrible, you wouldn't even want her, then she's going to go last in the class, and then that's easy placing there. So what we're going to look for in market steers we're going to look for degree of muscling. So muscling is essentially the meat, so that's why that's number 1 on our list here. Next is the degree of finish or fat cover. So this is important because we like flavor in our meat, right? So essentially the fat adds that flavor to our meat. Growth capacity. Is this animal going to grow, or is it going to not grow very well and be short and not have enough room to have a lot of meat on it? The next one is structure. So is this animal able to move from feed bunk to the water tank to the other side of the pen easily, or are they limping? Are they too straight in their hocks that they can't get up? So that's also an importance to look for. Balance is the way that they look. So you want the animal to look good from the side. You want them to look natural and like an ideal heifer or something like that. And then also frame size. You don't want a really small frame, especially in heifers. That's important because they have to grow a calf in them. But in market, more meat can grow on a larger frame. Okay. So now we're going to dig in more deeper into the muscling part. So the muscle is the product of the meat of the animal. So that's why in market cattle, muscle is very important. So the more muscle means the more valuable the animal will be. Yield grade, this is a term you guys should all write down. So yield grade, so the lower yield grades equals more product. So the yield grade incorporates in how much muscle they have and how much fat. So you want them to be really muscular with a lot of less fat, but you still want the marbling in the meat, which we'll also talk about at a later time. Okay, degree of muscling. So in steers, it's best determined by evaluating the thickness through their center quarter. So we kind of talked, the quarter is in the back leg. Width between the rear feet, when steer stands or walks. So you don't want them to be this close, their hocks touching. You want them to be wide so then they can have more muscle on them. And then the last one here is shape over the top. So you want a butterfly shape. So when we talk about that, we want kind of a little indentation down the top. And that means that they are heavy and muscled. Okay, so we'll look at some examples here. So the first one on the left is obviously thin muscled. You can see how narrow they stand at the back. That is not good. You do not want that. Okay, and then as it progresses, you got average muscled, thick muscled, and super muscled. So super muscled would obviously be ideal. Even thick muscled would be fine. The thicker they are, the more meat. Okay, finish. So finish is the amount of fat on the animal. So the more finish means the better tasting the product is, or the meat. So marbling is intermuscular fat, so that's the fat within the meat. And then that also plays into quality grades. If you guys ever go to a restaurant, you might see that there's prime, choice. You probably rarely see select in a grocery store. And then animals finish from front to back, and then they finish top to bottom. So the last place on the animal is the flank. So you might have to look back in your notes and remember where the flank is. Okay, so let's see here. Areas to consider when evaluating fat are the top line, underline, the body depth also plays in a effect with the amount of finish. You also have the brisket. The brisket will be a lot more full when the animal is finished. There'll be little pockets on the tail head that you can see. The cod or udder, and then the shoulder, and over the ribs. So those are all places to evaluate fat. Okay, so then here you guys can just take a look and look at the places that we just discussed. This is saying that this cow weighed 950 pounds and had a 0.8 inch back fat. And they graded choice and had a yield grade 4. Yield grade 4 is actually not very good. You want a lower yield grade, so your 1s and your 2s would be good yield grades, but you got to get more fat to get the more flavoring in the lassos, so it's kind of hard to do. Okay, here's just some more places to evaluate. We might talk about this more in class. Okay, here's the brisket when I talked about the fullness. So this one has the fuller, the one on the left has the fuller brisket, and then the other one on the other side obviously isn't probably ready for market. Okay, so growth capacity. So market steers with high growth capacity will be wide in their chest. They'll be wide between the feet when walking or standing. They'll have a uniform body depth, open through the ribs, and long bodied. All these are good things to have in a market steer. So once again, here we can kind of see visually. Here's his wide chest. Look at how deep bodied and long bodied he is. And also his stance is pretty wide. Okay, soundness. So soundness you really want to evaluate on the move. So sound and structurally correct animals will have a long, straight top line, so they won't be like roached in their top. They'll be long, level rumped, flexible, clean, flat jointed, long, powerful stride, and they'll have a good set to their hock and knees. And when we're talking about that, we want kind of like a curve in their hock. Okay, here you can see the set to the hock, so that's kind of the desired angle you want. Okay, so you can see the difference between the poor structured and the rump and the long leveled rumped, good structured steer here. Okay, imbalance. Balance refers to market steers having correct portions of width, depth, length. So you want them all to be equal. You want them to all look nice and blend together. Okay, so here's one that is not balanced. We can see that they get high in their flank, they're tight in their quarters. They just don't really look right. They're kind of just unbalanced. Okay, here's a good fronted steer. So they're not really fat, they're smooth shouldered. That would be ideal. And then here's another picture where all the parts there, they just fit well together, and this is what you want in a market steer. Okay, and frame size. So the optimum steer today's market should be medium framed and finished at about 1,200 pounds. So large frame steers will get too big before developing the adequate fat or finish, and small frame steers will be really early maturing, that they won't get fat before their optimum weight, or they'll get too fat before the optimum weight, excuse me. So you just kind of want a medium frame steer. So here's an example of a large frame steer weighing 1,400 pounds. Here's one of a too small steer weighing 900 pounds with way too much fat on them. And then here's one that's 1,250, which is just about right. Okay, so we're going to quickly look at an example of a market steer class. So go ahead, and you might need to pause the video and go ahead and look at the 4 steers in this class and go ahead and place them on the traits that we just learned about. Okay, so the official placing of this class was 2, 4, 3, 1. And they started with 2 because 2 was obviously the heaviest muscled in the class. You can see that down his top. He's also the best finished steer in the class. His structure could improve, but with market steers, we really don't care too much about structure. They just need to be able to walk to the feed bunk and make sure they can get on the trailer. And then we went to 1. We threw him to the bottom. He was the lightest muscled. He was poor structured. You can see how he's just really unbalanced as well. And then in our middle pair, we placed 4 over 3. Muscling is the main thing that places 2 over, or 4 over 3. So hopefully you wrote those down. We will actually practice this next one in class tomorrow. So hopefully you guys took good notes, and I will see you tomorrow.